Hello, my name is George Washington, Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Pleased to meet you. And what is your name? Well, I was just about to read some philosophy before my afternoon tea, so if you don't mind, I may go ahead and read it aloud. It's been quite pleasant weather we've had, isn't it? Well, I'll get started then. Chapter 2. Aristotle and Greek Science. Aristotle was born in Stagira, a Macedonian city some 200 miles to the north of Athens, in the year 384 before Christ. His father was a friend and physician to Amyntas, king of Macedon and grandfather of Alexander. Aristotle himself seems to have become a member of the great medical fraternity of the Asclepiads. He was brought up in the order of medicine, and as many later philosophers were brought up in the order of sanctity. He had every opportunity and encouragement to develop a scientific bent of mind. He was prepared from the beginning to become a founder of science. We have a choice of stories for his youth. One narrative represents him as squandering his patrimony in riotous living, joining the army to avoid starvation, returning to Stagira to practice medicine, and going to Athens at the age of 30 to study philosophy under Plato. A more dignified story takes him to Athens at the age of 18 and puts him at once under the tutelage of the great master. But even in this likelier account there is sufficient echo of a reckless and irregular youth living rapidly. The scandalized reader may console himself by observing that in either story our philosopher anchors at last in the quiet groves of the academy. Under Plato he studied 8 or 20 years, and indeed the pervasive Platonism of Aristotle's speculations, and indeed suggests the longer period. One would like to imagine these as very happy years, a brilliant pupil guided by an incomparable teacher, walking like Greek lovers in the gardens of philosophy. But they were both geniuses, and it is notorious that geniuses accord with one another as harmoniously as dynamite with fire. Almost half a century separated them. It was difficult for understanding to bridge the gap of years and cancel the incompatibility of souls. Plato recognized the greatness of the strange new pupil from the supposedly barbarian north, and spoke of him at once as the nous of the academy, as if to say, intelligence personified. Aristotle had spent money lavishly in his collection of books, that is, in those printless days, manuscripts. He was the first, after Euripides, to gather together a library, and the foundation of the principles of library classification was among his many contributions to scholarship. Therefore, Plato spoke of Aristotle's home as the house of the reader, and seems to have meant the sincerest compliment. But some ancient gossip will have it that the master intended a sly but vigorous dig at a certain bookwormishness in Aristotle. A more authentic quarrel seems to have arisen towards the end of Plato's life. Our ambitious youth apparently developed an Oedipus complex against his spiritual father for the favors and affections of philosophy, and began to hint that wisdom would not die with Plato, while the old sage spoke of his pupil as a foal that kicks his mother after draining her dry. The learned Zeller, in whose pages Aristotle almost achieves the nirvana of respectability, would have us reject these stories, but we may presume that where there is still so much smoke there was once a flame.